Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jim Walker. I'm the federal CTO and evangelist and public sector evangelist for UiPath. We're out at Forward IV and the Bellagio in Las Vegas, having just a really great conference. First time in a couple of years we've been able to do it because of COVID. On Monday, we had our public sector summit. 75 people attended. It was twice the size as we expected it to be, and just some really great information that was put out. We had some speakers lined up that weren't able to travel, who are government speakers, and nobody better to talk to you about RPA in the public sector than government presenters. So today, I'm very fortunate and excited to introduce to you Ajay Gupta. He's the Chief Digital Transformation Officer for the state of California, DMV. They have been very aggressive with RPA over the last year or so. But what we really want you to know about is their efforts to stand up a robotics center of excellence. And so with that, Ajay, I appreciate you being here. I'm going to turn it over to you and just ask you to talk to people about your center of excellence.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. Sorry I didn't get to see you all in person, but this is the next best thing. We weren't able to travel out of state for multiple reasons, COVID being one of them. So thanks for, nice to meet you virtually. So today I'm going to talk about Robotic Process Automation Center of Excellence that we have set up at California DMV, which is becoming somewhat of a template for other departments in California as well, as they're taking on their journey and getting the most out of the robotic process automation technologies that this particular innovation and technology set has to offer for our business needs, for our technology needs, and so on. So with that, what I'm going to talk about is our Center of Excellence accomplishments today, and really recapturing our journey. Some of you who are in public sector may be interested in how did we set it up, how did we go about doing it, what are the various pieces and parts we put together, what are the lessons we learned, and so on. So I'll be talking about that. And then finally talk about some of the use cases we put together. It is an evolving journey. Since I put together this presentation, there are quite a few other things we have done, but depending on the time and the questions coming in, we could probably talk about some of that in detail or focus on a particular use case that we are working on now. So just a little bit on the California DMV side, what we really are, right? So you can appreciate the size of it. We have 234 locations as it relates to our we are really a brick and click shop, right? As you can imagine, we are the largest retail shop for California in a way, with over 175 field office locations. Then we have driver safety, as well as investigations, as well as business centers, all totaling up to 234 locations with over 10,000 employees. We also have support from 186 auto clubs that provide some of our services to, and over 5,000 business partners that provide DMV services and integrate with our systems and business processes to deliver services to our customers. So if you were to think at the FY, which is 2019, 2020, we had 37 million transactions as it relates to vehicle registration, 9.5 million transactions as it relates to driver license, etc. And total 59 million transactions, including other transactions. We support occupational licensing and some other services as well. And then just to give you an idea of incoming paper, we have 11.5 million incoming paper. We also have over 120 million mail going out. So as you can expect, the scale of California DMV, we are the largest DMV in the nation, and we are the largest, most populated state in the nation too. So that adds up to a whole lot of service needs from our customers. So now let's quickly talk about the Center of Excellence. First of all, the objective of the Center of Excellence that we have set up is create a reliable, repeatable, and secure technology, process, and governance to implement robotic process automation across all divisions. Mouthful, but extremely important to come up with that objective. We have many different divisions. We got licensing operations division, we got registration operations division, investigations, customer support, field offices, legislative, legal, public affairs, and so on. So creating that reliable, repeatable, and secure technology that can work across these divisions was really a prime objective. So just to give you a status of what we have done so far. So we started this journey of trying to set up an COE about 2 years ago. It realized, 6 months into it, and we had, all the procurement and things done, and we started to work on real use cases. But since then, we have created 28 different use cases. We have 107,000, we call them tech hours, saved. These are technician hours. These are really staff hours that have been saved. 4.83 million transactions that have been completed using robotic process automation. We have 9. So I'll talk about this a little bit further, but we have these automations called web automation. And then we have what we call as bot only use cases. We'll touch some of those later. But in general, in terms of hours and dollars, we have saved $5.4 million in savings or cost avoidance and so on, which includes saving in mailing fees, number of hours saved, paper saved, and so on, right? The time and material combined. Out of the 28 use cases, there are 5 use cases that actually have reached end of life already. Those were created for specific COVID workloads, and they finished their work and they are done. Those were created for certain one-time needs. They finished their job and they retired. So, they've actually completed the full life cycle. So we've seen the full life cycle, right? From cradle to grave, so to say, of these bots. Now, this is what the journey looked like for us. We started this, like I said, 2 years ago with assessing the need. When I came in as the Chief Digital Transformation Officer for the DMV, I was really looking for some quick wins. I was looking for areas where, while we wanted to come up with a long-term plan and a strategy in various areas, the front office and the back office, we needed some quick wins to actually show that, yep, transformation is possible and we can make the transformation quick. So I looked at many different strategies and tactics. Robotic process automation was one of them. I also realized that we needed to not have a moving target. So one of the things that we started to look at was, how do we contain the changes to our legacy systems? So when we are looking for modernization, we don't have this moving target constantly, and also create destabilization. And we're looking to rapidly transform, to show value to our customers, to legislature, to people who were just not happy with the DMV as a whole. It has a pretty bad reputation generally wherever you go, any state that you see. So my job was to transform within and also transform a reputation outside. So in general, RPA came in as one of the tactics I wanted to use to create that rapid transformation and also to contain legacy. And I'll talk about some of the use cases in a minute. But I started by introducing the concept to our division deputies, our business teams, and the IT teams. Then I also, once I shared the concept, I asked for ideas. Okay, based on what you understand, what do you think could fit based on the business that you do today? What could work? And then we came up with some ideas. Next was to pick the right tool. So we actually had a rapid evaluation of the major robotic process automation tools. Looked at Automation Anywhere, looked at Blue Prism, looked at UiPath. We ended up picking UiPath. Their UiPath Academy really stood out to us, and obviously the user interface and the studio really stood out to us as well. So that made it easy for us to kind of pick the tool, because we really, at some point in time, wanted to take over the robotic process automation. So my strategy was, borrow and buy and then build. Meaning I was going to borrow from the industry for these resources, and then hire people, right, which is the buy strategy. And then finally build, as in build our own people to kind of run the center of excellence. We also wanted to pick, so we picked but we also wanted to pick the ideal business team who was willing to change, who really needed the change, and had willing parties who had the aptitude to learn fast and be the sponsor for this, right? We needed to really have a successful model, not really have to deal with a lot of resistance to change and things like that. And also starting small. So we don't want to pick a big use case. So we picked the ideal use case. We kind of just ran with it. We also, once we had, some flavor of success, and as you have seen from the numbers that we had quite a bit, we want to establish a repeatable operating model, which relates to the people, right? The opportunities, which is the pitch part, how things are going to be planned and delivered, and then the basic blueprints on how they're going to be delivered in a repeated fashion. So like I talked about the staffing part, the COE, which was the borrow, build, and buy strategy. The pitch part, we came up with this, this notion of concept commit and execution commit. It's actually an already existing strategy quite a bit. Actually, DMV director who joined from the private sector really came up with that strategy. And I really love that notion of not necessarily going all in, figuring out, what we really want to do and come up with a proposal and deliver. Let's the concept, right? Commit to the concept. Let's come up with the idea, super lightweight, think about what the value is, for the organization. And then talk about if along with automation, we can actually do some rapid process improvements as well. And then finally do an execution commit where we can decide on resources, priority, timeline, etc. So that two-step process, which is called the pitch, is in place. The plan, we have the standard milestones and deliverables associated with it, right? So you have the specific, actually we are using UiPath provided the design documents, right, that you would use for the PDDs, or is what they call them, process design documents and so on. So we took some of the best practices from the vendor. We had some of our cultural practices that we incorporated into our milestones on what we want to do, right? Training milestones, user acceptance milestones, cutover and maintenance milestones, and so on. Came up with a standard template as it relates to a typical plan. So we can fit all the new pitches into that plan. And then finally, the blueprints. This was extremely critical to us. So we actually innovated in this particular area. We came up with a web bot, a process bot, an integration bot, and an intelligent bot. So let me explain what those are. Webbot is something that we have put together where we need to, in a rapid manner, create a web channel for a service that doesn't exist on the web. Our IT system is 64 years old, way beyond, when I was even born, and some of the assembler code and some of the, COBOL code still sits, and it works really well, except it's hard to modify and change. And obviously exposed to the web, right? There is no self-service in that particular technology of the world. So we created this notion of a web application supported by this web accelerator that we chose called SimplyGov, which does web process flows. And then SimplyGov and UiPath work together to take the workload, the intake, and have a listener bot listening to the workload. It can do basic server-side validations with legacy and give real-time feedback to the user. So it actually serves as a very nice way to validate the data and improve our data quality. And then also, once the submission's done of the web intake, it can actually start the legacy machinery, using typical swivel chair scenarios with RPA and get stuff done. So that worked out really well for us during COVID. And for other use cases that we have really rapidly transformed in as short as 3 weeks, we have gone live with a full web application connecting to our legacy and finishing the workloads, automating the front office and the back office work. And then there are process bots. These are way more involved. It requires business process re-engineering of sort, where you have an existing process, you find a place for the bot, and you execute, the bot in pieces and parts to automate swivel chair-like scenarios and to do intake and to do validation and to do commits and things like that. And then there is integration bot where we are doing new builds, and the technologies are so far apart that they can't talk to each other because of legacy. So we use bots to integrate and let them talk to each other. And finally, intelligent bots, which are combining the decision-making that AI, ML, and some of the rules engines would offer and connect those to the bots so it can do some of the processing and thinking for us. So those are complex bots. And finally, coming up with a maintenance, monitoring, and evolution plan as part of the COE. So that's our COE journey in a nutshell. Now, just a little bit of recap. This is a Gartner slide that I really like in terms of the automation continuum, where you have the human process, and then you have the routine processes. Then you have standardized rule base, and then dynamic adaptive, where we are changing and where RPA fits in terms of structured data from on the left side to unstructured data, and then creating these fully automated, intelligent, autonomous bots, and intelligent bots being in that particular category. But the task automation, the process automation and process discovery and system automation, that's the evolution that we are looking towards. We have started with on the left side. We are trying to go to the right side with this COE. So just want to put that out there, and we'll talk about that some more in a second as well. Now, in general, before we get to the examples and talk about the continuum, I want to also talk about what is it that we have produced out of the COE. We have created these robotic process automation blueprints, like the web bot that I talked about, as with the combination of the web accelerator and UiPath, we are able to now have these rapid web channels that we can create, even though we are maintaining legacy, but we are able to do that now. It can actually collect payments. It can do these server-side validation. It can, it can process a lot of back office stuff as well, including talking to legacy, talking to our accounting systems, and so on, and making it all work. We also created this notion of virtual field office, where we have this somewhat semi-automated intake, and then bots are doing some work, humans are doing some work, and then finally finishing that work with a, what would have been an in-person conversation with a customer now is done through virtual office. So, and there is a few other blueprints as well related to each types of the bots that I talked about: the web, the process, the integration, and the intelligent bots. And then we came up with, and this was, when UiPath was still coming up with the ROI calculator as part of their product suite, we came up with our own very specific ROI calculator as well, depending on number of what we consider as an FTE in terms of number of hours, what we consider as the savings that are coming out of like not doing error validations and the not doing the data entry and not making some of the decisions that could be made by the bot. And then the offset that with the technology cost of implementing the bot, right? And then offset that with maintenance of maintaining the bot, right? So came up with an ROI calculator with the positive, the negatives, and we use that now during our pitches, right? So how many hours are being saved? What's your savings? And what do you project the savings going to be after a certain number of adoption? And bots never perfect, right? So there will be always exceptions, and we need this specialized workforce to manage the exception. So what's the cost of that? So incorporating all of that. We also came up with the team structure with the, some of the best practices that we got from Gartner as well, and as well as UiPath. We came up with this notion of bot manager from the business team, the process manager, the product tester, and so on. So that's all part of that. And there is a RACI matrix that we created as well. Came up with the operating model as it comes to operational, tactical, and strategic. So strategic is our portfolio level, tactical is the projects that we run, and operational is once we have implemented those projects, how do you maintain that, right? And then from security standpoint, extremely important, right? The access, segregation of duties, password management, and some of those things. So we kind of came up with our operating model related to that as well. And we organize, right? So these pitches that we do, we are following somewhat of a lean process. So our California HR department has a lean academy. So we borrowed some of that from them. Part of that is, you emphasize why is the change needed? What is the current state? What's the future state? Some of the basic questions with both qualitative and quantitative are answered. And then gap is performed. And then, obviously we'll continue to evolve and match what is projected as savings with the real savings as well. There are times when the savings are underwhelming because we didn't spend enough time marketing the solutions that would drive more customers towards the particular channel we have created, and therefore less savings. So we kind of course corrected on the way as well. And then finally, lessons learned. So some of those lean strategies have been put in place too. Now, from maturity standpoint for the Center of Excellence, we have come up with the notion of making sure that we pick the right projects, right? We don't pick the projects that are just there, as I talked about. There's the pitch coming in, there's the ROI discussion, and we do concept commit and then execution commit. And then we also, at the time of going live, before that, we have a milestone called readiness validation that we do as well before we go live. Make sure the bot manager is in place, so no surprises. Make sure we have done enough marketing and communication. Make sure we have talked to the unions as well. That's something that we really care for, and we want to make sure that our promise to the unions is made, that any time we introduce automation, we talk about why that's actually good for the workforce and not bad for it, right? We are actually working on improving customer service, but we are also helping make our employees' life better and more focused on quality than quantity. Picking the right design pattern, paper to digital bots. The current paper workloads are being converted to these web bots, back office bots, integration bots, and then we have these one-time conversion bots too. So it's something I talked about as well. So that's become pretty much, we're picking the right design, defining and assigning responsibility, per the ACI I talked about, and execution support. So that's our process, that's our COE, that's what we have put together at this point in time. Now, I want to now jump into the highlighted use cases. So we have a program called Motor Carrier Permit, where people who need to drive, above certain weight or have hazardous material and things like that, they need to get a permit from the DMV, and it was all paper-based. And if you need to renew, it's all paper-based as well. And you got to go to the field office or you got to mail it in. It's work for us. It's work for the people who are seeking the permit. So we came up with this plan, which is your WebBot plan, where the paper was converted to this nice web e-form using this web accelerator, which then talked to UiPath to do validation and also to do the intake. And finally, the accounting part, which is also done because we now enabled online payments. Once the payment information is collected, it would reconcile with accounting using the bots as well. The same process use case was also applied for our occupational licensing. Same thing, right? If you're a dealer or a salesperson who's trying to sell a car, you need a permit, and they used to spend their precious time, right? That they should be making money in DMV office many hours, right? I have a buddy who works for CarMax. He's like, yep, I used to spend like 4 to 6 hours trying to figure out what needed to be done, make the field office trip, and then get my renewal every 2 years. Now I can do it online. So he was really appreciative of that. Temporary driver license. This was an interesting one, where we had to put together during COVID a couple of strategies. We needed to create, okay, well, I am going to give you a waiver, your driver license expiring, but the field offices are closed. And I'm going to give you a temporary permit. Instead of sending it to everybody, we're like, okay, do self-service, go to the field of, go to this website and get a PDF of that document that you can print yourself. So we were able to save a lot of costs associated with it, because otherwise we would have to send, we do 500,000 renewals a month for driver licenses. All of those people during COVID shutdown would have been required to send a mail. So each mail cost me like 55 cents, right? When everything's said and done. So imagine that money that we were able to save right away, right? That's the money saving that we're talking. The same is true with expanding the population that needed to do driver license internet renewals. So we have this internet renewal already, a service, but it's not available for everybody. There are pieces and parts that cannot be done by the customer online because they have parking fee due and they are over 70 years old and things like that. But during COVID, we had to create certain exceptions and we couldn't modify the legacy programs fast enough. So we ran bots. We ran bots to create those waivers for them so they could actually do things online. And we were able to do that for almost 600,000 people. Then virtual field office, it's something I talked about. It's actually since then we have kind of expanded the services when I put together this slide deck. But in general, as you can see on the right side, there's quite a few bots involved along with people kind of working together to combine the legacy work with our online work and the interaction that we have to do as part of this virtual field office, which created this virtual channel. So customers didn't have to visit field office, but for transactions that are not available online. So we created this virtual channel via email and live chat and things like that. And then you have technicians doing the work, but then after technicians are done collecting and making decisions, bot did rest of the work. So it saved a lot of time and energy. And then also bots helped us do back office work when the documents arrive, because we still needed some physical documents like your title and things like that. When it arrived into our mail queue, bot worked with AI, triaged those documents, and then connected those documents back into our CRM system. So we knew that document has arrived and now you can finish the processing, right? And that was also done automatically. So quite a bit of complex augmented virtual field office activities were done by bots. Then we evolved into, okay, let's see what we can do with the voice channel. Contact center could take a call and press a button and it'll automatically, bot would collect the data and verify the results and present it to the contact center person so they could issue a renewal form for them as a replacement. Now we are expanding that to self-service, where IVR is going to be able to take the information that's needed, automatically verify results as part of this fetch bot is what we call it. And then the bot can then process the rest of the transaction too. And then another one is accident reporting, which is kind of similar to the process bot that we previously talked about, except with the nuance that we realize that a lot of accident reporting is done, some of it is done by actual people who are in accident, but others is done by actual insurance companies. So insurance companies don't like to fill out these bulk forms and things like that. So we used a bot to do self-service, but we also did a bot to use the exact same, actually we reuse the same bot for integration as well. So we are offering like a file-based or a REST API-based integration into our bot ecosystem so it can do the processing instead of a form. So two channels are enabled by the same bot in a way. The digital mailroom is an interesting one here where bots and AI are working together to read an incoming mail, process the data into legacy systems. Something that I talked about as well, where a physical paper would arrive. Once it's scanned, because you need to have scanning first, right? Creating to digital format, then it's passed to the bot and AI to finish the work and then process the data extracted from it and the decisions extracted from the data as well to update our legacy systems. So that's also completed as well. So with that, I would say that's pretty much the completion of my session today. I do have a somewhat of a fun video that I want to share, see if I can make that work here. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can maximize it for video. And then I'll go back and share again, optimize for video clip. And let me share my screen this time and open up my browser window for a video. So this is the video of my second residency automation where we needed to send out these letters to about 4 million people by mail. And we needed to receive the letters and then process them. So that back office processing was going to be a killer for us. So we came up with this strategy where we're going to send the letter to the customer because it was required by law for us to give something physical. The customer is going to sign it and send it back. However, in the letter, we said, okay, you can actually do one better. Avoid sending this letter because we actually avoided sending a sending postage because we gave them an online option. If you don't want to pay for postage, go online and do it now. So where we created this web accelerator form, base form, e-signatures, and then the bot did rest of the processing. So that's the fun video here. So I'm going to start that video now. Actually, let me kill that. And hopefully you all can see the sound too. There you go. Hear the sound. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I just wanted to say, well, this is the end of my presentation. So thank you for taking time listening, and back to you, Jim.
Oh, so you packed a ton of stuff into that time for sure. Couple of little quick ditties for you. Feel free to be short on them if you like, but I like the idea that you were happy to say we've decommissioned 5 of them. You used robotics. Some people say, oh, well, robots is a Band-Aid. And I would say, yes, when you need a heart surgery, you need a Band-Aid. And when you get a little thing on your finger, you need a Band-Aid. But it sounds like you were happy to have those 5 when you needed them.
Exactly. I think they were needed just in time, and they did their job, and we moved on. Now, imagine not having that option. I would have to hire a bunch of temporary staff for a very short period of time to do all this work. And I didn't have to go through that rigor. And in state world, that's a rather large undertaking, right? Because of the data, the type of information available, and the contractual agreements that are required to be done, we are not as nimble as private industry. So bots actually enable that nimbleness for us.
And what about your staff? So there's always in the press about, oh, people are afraid of bots taking work away. Now, I say certainly bots take task away, but what has your staff's reaction been to that 107,000 extra hours?
So yeah, when we implemented our first process bot, we learned a lot from it. 2 things emerged. One, some were really appreciative because their backlog reduced, but there were others. Now imagine if I'm able to do 90% of the work. Most of the time bot is doing the, let's call it simpler work, right? Mechanical work and things like that. And that left us with complex 10%, which everybody was doing all the time anyways, except now the staff only saw that complex 10% work. So they actually said first that, well, now my transactions are taking longer, right? Because of bot, not realizing they're doing less, but they're doing only the quality work. So it was a little bit of coaching required to set the expectations around that. Okay, but you don't have a backlog of 1,000 cases that you got to sit over the weekend and do it. Now you are taking 20 minutes to do it because, typically used to take 2 minutes to do this transaction, but thousands of those are gone out of your queue. So you're not doing that anymore. So it was somewhat mixed, but now business teams are excited. They are coming up with their own pitches every other week that are presented to the Center of Excellence executive team. And we make a decision. We have some rule of thumb that we follow. Okay, you got to have at least 1.5 FTE savings, over the entirety of the year. You got to have or certain dollar amount. And now they are kind of looking through that lens and coming up with the ideas on their own. So it's been a very learning and interesting journey for us, and very meaningful at the end of the day.
Perfect. And one last question for you. So I read the press all the time, right? And I'm happy to do it. You guys have done a pretty good job over the last year getting recognized. So what's the pride of your RPA team, and what are some of the recognitions that you've received?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. Yeah, so last year we got recognized for 2 different awards. One of them actually involved a bot. This year we have 3 different awards that relates to technology and business process improvements and most impact to our staff and our constituents. Government technology awards, one specific to California called Best of California. We got 2 awards in that category, and one which was at a national level as part of our modernization journey. All of them had bots as specific components that helped us put some of these ideas together quickly. So we're really appreciative of some of the value that these this virtual workforce is bringing to us.
Perfect. Well, AJ, I appreciate you. Your team is truly the first in the nation to use robotic process automation for DMV. And it sounds like that you've just adopted it now to really run your programs and with your COE and that. So thank you for participating today and kind of sharing that story out there.
And no problem, Jim. You're welcome.